President Volodymyr Zelensky says Kyiv is preparing a new phase of the war, posting a video message yesterday announcing plans for preemptive strikes on Russian facilities that support Moscow's war. The move comes as Ukraine intensifies attacks on Russian energy infrastructure. A recent drone strike reportedly caused major damage to a Moscow oil refinery, knocking it offline and adding to Russia's fuel supply challenges. The Financial Times reports the Kremlin is increasingly bypassing normal budget rules as war costs there soar, with deficits rising, reserves shrinking, and mounting compensation payments linked to heavy Russian casualties. Meanwhile, Moscow has been pressuring Russia's closest ally, Belarus, to get more involved in its war effort to help them. That triggered a warning from Zelensky, who said Kyiv will strike drone stations inside Belarus if the country continues to allow Russia to use them. That threat apparently worked, with Belarus reportedly taking the equipment offline. Meanwhile, President Trump's tone on the war continues to shift. At the White House yesterday, Trump praised Zelensky as courageous, saying Ukraine is doing pretty well and holding its own despite heavy losses on both sides.
Like winners, do you think President Zelensky is winning right now?
Well, he's doing pretty well. Look, no matter how you look at it, he's doing pretty well. He's holding his own, at least. A lot of people dying on both sides, but I think he's doing pretty well.
Can I ask you?
Look, you have to say he's courageous. He's got great equipment, but he's got great men. He's got fighters.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Yeah,
I thought he had no cards.
David Ignatius, he has a lot of cards, and this is just, I was going to say, this is one of those weeks where, you know, a decade happens in a week. It seemed like a decade was happening in an afternoon yesterday as reports just continue to flood in about Ukraine's growing strength. You remember earlier last week, Zelensky threatened Belarus's dictator and said, you either take your radios offline or we'll do it for you. He buckled yesterday, more afraid of Zelensky than Putin. We could go on, but it is remarkable how quickly things are moving on the Ukraine-Russian front.
So Zelensky really is beginning to roll now. There's nothing succeeds like success. And as Ukraine pushes at the Russians at the front lines, as it steps up its campaign against Crimea, really trying to turn, in the words of the Ukrainian defense minister, turn Crimea into an island, cut it off so that it can't be supplied from Russia. I think the Russians are really beginning to see a very strategic campaign against them, against their key ally in Lukashenko in Belarus. I don't see any sign yet that Putin is willing to change his policies, but this campaign is becoming more and more costly for Russia as a result of really systematic planning by Ukraine. The campaign in Crimea is an example. Crimea is where this war started in 2014. The Ukrainians are now going systematically after bridges and roads. So I figured that in the last 17 days, they've hit 21 bridges across different estuaries in Crimea, almost choking Crimea for supplies. There's still one big bridge that's open, but they're going to try to shut that soon. So it's so interesting to see Trump, who scorned Zelensky when he seemed weak, now deciding he's courageous and speaking favorably. That's just the way wars seem to work. There's going to be a tough summer ahead. I don't think anybody should be under illusions that Ukraine is now going to roll forward and this war is heading towards a happy ending. There's going to be heavy bombing of Kyiv and other cities. But for the moment, Ukraine is really showing what organization, planning, a strategic campaign, what that can do for you.
Now, and Caddy, President Trump, was sitting there with the NATO Secretary General and made sure to bash many NATO members, took swipes at Italy, at the UK. The list goes on and on. The grievances he still has because he didn't get any help, he says, during the Iran war. But it was striking here. This is warmer rhetoric towards Ukraine and Zelensky in particular than we've heard from Trump in a long time. And one of the truisms we know about someone who shifts his views so frequently is Trump likes a winner. And right now, he can see where the momentum is in this conflict. It's with Ukraine. To David's point, a long fight ahead, to be sure. But it does seem like perhaps we're on the brink of America maybe helping out Kyiv more than we have in a while.
No, you have those images, as David was talking about, of people flooding out of Crimea. I mean, the two images that I take away from this week are those columns of black smoke over Moscow because they've hit some of the refineries, and then those traffic jams of people trying to leave Crimea. And that gives you a sense of how the war is going. And Donald Trump sees that. And it's no coincidence that his Joint Chief of Staff, Dan Kane, recently called Ukraine the Silicon Valley of warfare at the moment. There is a realization of what the Ukrainians have done. They've had this injection of European cash. They got extra $100 billion this year from the Europeans. That seems to have helped them as well. But boy, does it change the tone. I've just been reading Maggie and Jonathan Swan's description, Haberman and Jonathan Swan's description of that awful meeting just over a year ago in February of last year that shocked the world when Donald Trump and J.D. Vance berated Vladimir Zelensky and told him he had none of the cards, and what a change in tone there is now. And that is all done by the Ukrainians with help from the Europeans, but all done by the Ukrainians.
Say, Sam. So tell me, politically, what do you think, Sam? Where does this go from here, politically, inside Washington? Obviously, Republican senators have long supported Ukraine. There have been some breakaways in the House and some breakaways in the Senate as well. But for the most part, Republicans have wanted to lean into helping Ukraine. Does that happen now? Do they have more of a chance to work with the president to open the door to finally pressure Vladimir Putin to get to the negotiating table so this bloody war can end?
Well, I'm sure Donald Trump will never flip back. So, yeah, no. I mean, this is the problem here, right? It's like it depends on the week with Donald Trump here. And frankly, it feels like he's doing foreign policy based on vibes and video clips that he sees. There's no indication that I get, maybe David would know this better than I do, about the administration being more open to pushing more funding towards the Ukrainians, backing them with more weaponry. They continue to push all of the burden onto the Europeans. And Trump's been very clear about that. Thinks it's in Europe's backyard. And while he is more complimentary of Zelensky there, there's no indication that he's any less frustrated by the inability for the war to come to an end. So I don't think this necessarily changes the equation in Washington all that much. I will say there are backers of Ukraine in Washington, D.C. on the Hill who are extremely more confident now about coming out and saying, hey, this was the path we should have taken all along. We can expedite this war if we just push more aid to the front lines. Vladimir Putin looks foolish for having launched this war, and this is a real opportunity to, cause internal strife within Russia. I mean, that is essentially what the Ukrainians are doing here. They're trying to sow doubt inside Russia, and Katie's right, the images of the fleeing traffic from Crimea are remarkable. If you haven't seen them, you should look them up. But if you ask about the sort of macro political dynamics, I'm not sure much changes other than Trump being a little bit more complimentary here and there.